Yes, hello to you all once again. Welcome back to your number one and favourite classic dirt bike TV, where we try our very best here to bring you more of those old school vintage dirt bikes from way back in the day. Now, thanks again to all the brand new subscribers who have recently signed up to CDB TV. It appears that most of you out there are continuing to enjoy my video content with regards looking at these old dirt bikes. So once again, thanks very much for your commitment and your support of my channel. Okay, we're going to press right on again with another video. Now in this episode we're going to take a look at another machine from the Iain Clark Motorcycle Collection. So let's jump straight into that video and take a look at Iain's lovely JBR 500 Twinshocker. Now, when the great John Banks left CCM in 1977 after many successful years with Alan Clues riding the BSA B50 powered Clues Scramblers, John wanted to branch out and then build his own make of motocross machines, and it was mainly because John Banks was heavily involved with Honda through his motorcycle business that he decided to build a bike around the Honda XLXR 500 four-stroke motor, which from 1978 was the latest power plant from Japan and was proving to be extremely popular with off-road riders that raced enduros and motocross events. Now, by the time that 1979 came around, John Banks was needing chassis for his brand new Honda project, and so he contacted his old employer, Alan Clues at CCM, to see if he could build him an initial 25 chassis kits that would be suitable to take the Honda XR 500 engine. And also in 1979, CCM did build a few enduro versions of this bike for John Banks at that time, but both these motocross and enduro models would then of course be known as John Banks Replica Hondas, or JBRs. Although, as you're no doubt aware, nowadays these JBR chassis are made exclusively by Mark Janik at Mojo Motorbikes, and Mark also used to build frames for MRD Matisse back in the day, and after 11 years of employment at MRD, Mark had built more than 400 chassis for that Matisse company. Now, it was in early 2007 that Mark decided to set up on his own, and he then formed Mojo Motorbikes to make chassis for all manner of off-road motorcycles, and nowadays Mark builds these JBR chassis exclusively to supply to Rod Spry, who is the main man when it comes to building these JBR 500 four-strokers. And actually, this featured chassis that we're looking at here is only frame number 3, which was one of the very early JBR chassis while they were still experimenting with various types of geometries and layouts of these JBR frames. And it's said that the final chassis parameters were all finalised after this semi-prototype design was completed. But our featured JBR Honda here is another very nice machine taken from the Iain Clark Motorcycle Collection, and Iain's another good supplier of some of these old dirt bikes to my YouTube channel, as we've featured several other examples of Iain's race bikes in the past here on my Classic Dirt Bike TV channel. And so as we move on to this XR 500 Honda four-stroke power plant. Now, what exactly can you say about this pretty awesome Honda motor that's not already been well documented, other than, of course, it's a single cylinder four-stroke engine with a twin exhaust port cylinder head with a single overhead camshaft and 4 valve top end. Now, as I remember, these engines had a bore of, I think it was about 89 millimetres and a stroke of 80 millimetres. Now, it had a wet standard multi-plate clutch that was fitted onto the production version of these engines, but as an upgrade, you could also fit a clutch with stronger springs and better plates. And on the transmission side, also a good strong 5-speed gearbox, which had more than enough cogs to keep your left leg busy dancing up and down on that shifter. Now, back in the day, I'm pretty sure that it was a key-in carburetor that was bolted onto these XR motors, but it was still quite common to see others like McCooney's and other configurations of carburetors fitted onto these 500 Honda cylinder heads back in the day. Now, in terms of tuning these XR 500 4-stroke engines for more power, companies like HPF, or Horsepower Factory to give them their full title, are certainly the past masters of being able to wake up more horses from these Honda engines, and with some porting on the cylinder head and the cylinder and fitting bigger valves and maybe a hot cam, then the horsepower from these motors could be vastly improved over the stock output, which I think was around the 36 horsepower at the time. Although I have to say, if there was ever an engine that was built to be used as an off-road power plant, then these 500 Honda engines could certainly be custom made for that very specific purpose, because they were as tough as old boots, and they could certainly take severe abuse from even the most cack-handed of riders. And they were also ultra reliable as well, and in their stock trim they still had more than enough grunt to put you onto a step on the podium. But not all of Iain's JBR here is stock, as you can see, because Iain's also fitted a nice pair of these wide footrests to the chassis, which will give his feet a bit more support than those horrible skinny items that manufacturers always seem to fit onto their off-road bikes, even in these modern times. Now, once again, at the front end of our JBR Honda, we have a pair of Italian-made Marzocchi forks, which are normally the standard fitment on these JBR machines, and for the late 1970s and early 80s, these were used on a multitude of different off-road motorcycles across the globe, and to be fair, these were pretty good suspension units for their time, and that's probably why they were chosen to fit onto these John Banks Replica bikes as well. Now, once more, the stoppers at the front were a twin leading shoe arrangement, which again usually had enough braking force to pull up the big 500 Honda 4-stroker, and naturally this hub would have been borrowed from another make and model of motorcycle, but which particular make, I'm not entirely sure. But once again, at the rear end of Iain's JBR, a nice pair of quality-made Öhlins piggyback shocks, which are a pretty standard fitting on most of these Rod Spry built bikes, as usually it's nothing but the very best quality components that are used to build these 500 four-banger Twinshockers. And these Öhlins here are about as good as you can get, although, as you're no doubt aware, other suspension systems are available if you'd like something completely different on your particular JBR motorcycle bike build. But as you remember, we mentioned earlier that this Honda 500 motor was a single cylinder, but it also had a twin port exhaust cylinder head that of course had two stainless steel pipes running down either side of the chassis, which also of course had these twin tailpipes at the rear. And if you just happened to be chasing one of these bikes around a racetrack and you saw these twin pipes sticking out of the back of this bike, then you were in no doubt at all about what model of machine that you were chasing, because the rear of these JBRs is instantly recognisable. Now, once more, these nicely sculpted alloy fuel tanks were of course borrowed from the old CCM bikes of back in the day, and these earlier JBRs did tend to have the bare polished alloy fuel tanks, whereas subsequent JBR models did usually have them painted black or maybe even red, with the period correct JBR graphics down either side. But they were perfectly suited on these JBR chassis, and they normally held more than enough gas to feed that very thirsty Honda 500 engine on even the very longest of motor races. Now again, this chrome plated swing arm is all part of the JBR chassis kit that's usually supplied when you order one of these machines. And another drum brake here also at the rear, which is only one of the parameters that these bikes need to adhere to so that they can qualify as a bona fide twin shock racer. But once more, a quite substantial rear drive sprocket at the back, which is I think is a Talon 51 tooth item, which is fitted just to get the gearing absolutely correct for that Honda 500 motor. Now, as four-stroke twin shockers go, these JBR Hondas seats were among some of the very nicest that you could ever have on a twin shock race bike for the late 1970s or 80s, because they were very deep and plush, and not only that, they looked great in their black and red livery. Now again, up front we had a decent set of Renthal handlebars, complete with their Magura levers and their lever pivot covers also, just to keep any moisture or dust from getting into those intricate workings of those particular parts. But of course, the most important component on this bike is this Swedish-made Gunnar Gassa throttle, just to try and control the many horses that were just dying to run amok when that throttle was snapped open. Now, although these JBR Hondas are pretty good twin shock race bikes, are certainly not cheap, and in the past I've seen these machines sell for anything between £10,000 and £14,000 depending on their condition. But when you consider they're all made from hand-built frames and of course have that superb Honda motor and some of the best motocross components that you can buy, then you can certainly understand the cost involved. But the other factor is that of course you just can't walk into your local motorcycle race shop and then pick up one of these bikes, because it's quite a long process between placing your initial deposit and then taking delivery of one of these finished JBR machines, because all of these JBRs are made to order if you're looking to buy a brand new example. But of course you can opt to go for a used bike, but even those are still fetching big money on the twin shock racing bike market. Although a sorted out JBR 500 with the right rider in the saddle is still without doubt a very competitive package and a match for any twin shocker on the racetrack. Now, on the day that I grabbed these pictures and video clips of Iain's bike, he managed to secure 3 second place finishes on this JBR machine, and Iain also commented at the time that it was running superbly on the day and a great handling bike, and very quick with that big 4-stroke Honda motor. But of course this featured JBR is just one of 2 John Banks replicas that Iain has in his collection, and he also has this other model that he's just recently acquired, and this will be Iain's number 2 bike, used as a standby when he races them at future classic or twin shock race events. So not only has Iain got one of the nicest looking JBRs, he has to go and make us all doubly jealous by having 2 of them in his collection. Well, there you have it. I do hope you enjoyed that walk around another nice looking bike from the Iain Clark Motorcycle Collection. That's Iain's JBR 500 Honda Twinshocker. Quite a popular bike for use in the pre-1984 or twin shock class. Now, coming up next on my video channel, we'll be out and about once again, and we'll be covering round 3 of the Scottish Classic Motorcycle Racing Club's 2022 championship at Straven near Glasgow. So that will be next weekend, and of course 2 weeks after that we'll be heading to the border town of Dumfries to cover the big mega extravaganza from the Galloway Motorcycle Club, and that of course is their 3-day classic scrambles event that's held at the world famous Drumlandrig Castle. But if you can't make that particular event, then you can see all of the bikes and all of the racing right here on my CDB TV YouTube channel. So once again, thanks to you all for your continuing support of my channel and for subscribing, and I hope to see you again very soon right here on your #1 and favourite classic dirt bike TV channel.